a lot of people are really concerned about going keto or low carb or carnivore because of the cholesterol. We've gone through our whole lives. I'm 60, and all of my life I've been told that cholesterol is going to kill me if I have too much of it. Now, cholesterol, certainly as far as I was concerned, was in eggs, was in red meat, it was in all the good food really. And so when you are in a diet that involves eating lots of eggs, lots of meat, all that sort of stuff, then it's understandable that your cholesterol is just going to go skyrocketing out of control, and you're probably going to die pretty bloody quickly. That's certainly based on the information we were given. It turns out that that's not strictly true. In fact, it turns out that's not true in any respect whatsoever, for a few good reasons. The first really good reason to bear in mind is that cholesterol in your blood does not come from cholesterol that you eat. In other words, the eggs and the red meat have nothing to do with the cholesterol levels in your body. Hi, I'm Pete Robin. I'm from See Your Toes Again. This is podcast number 15, and I'm going to do it, it might not go for very long, and it's all going to be about cholesterol. Now, I'm no expert on cholesterol, so don't get me wrong. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but because of the situation that I just mentioned, where because I'm on a low-carb diet, I don't eat many carbs, and that means I do eat a lot of what I would call healthy foods like red meat and eggs and stuff, then you would think that I'm going to die of cholesterol. And most people who hear that for the first time would instantly think, oh, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. I'm definitely not doing that because of the cholesterol. And so it's really important that we go through and talk about this cholesterol caper and see if we can figure it out. So there's the first one. Cholesterol doesn't come from your diet. So where does it come from? Cholesterol is made in your body. And from what I can gather, it's made from just about any food that you give it. So even though you are on perhaps a low, what you would have thought a low cholesterol diet, you've stayed away from eggs, you've stayed away from red meat, you've stayed away from all of those sorts of things. That doesn't matter, because the cholesterol can be manufactured in your blood, in your body, from whatever it wants to make it from. So that's been a waste of everybody's time for the last 60 years. Where did this idea come from? Let's talk about that just very briefly. It came, I think it was in the 1960s, certainly in the 1970s. There was a chap called Ancel Keys. He was a scientist, and he was given the position of finding out why Americans were getting heart disease so readily. And so he analysed a whole bunch of different countries and came up with a consensus that it was saturated fats and high cholesterol from those saturated fats that was the killer that was causing the high heart disease rates. And unfortunately, he based that on basically pig poo amount of information. There was no concise information. In fact, we can now see that the information that he used was skewed. He got a bunch of dots from a bunch of different countries, and he drew a line that showed an upward gradient with how much red meat and cholesterol people eat, and said, there you go, the more cholesterol that people eat and the more red meat people eat, the more heart disease we have. Therefore, we have that direct correlation. The problem is he ignored about half a dozen other different countries that didn't fit his ideals. So anybody that looks at the statistics instantly sees that, well, actually, there's a whole bunch of dots all over the screen, and there's no correlation whatsoever. He's just left out a whole bunch of dots so that he could make his correlation. And he probably did so with great intention. He probably thought deep down, hey, look, I think it's saturated fats and cholesterol that is causing heart disease. So I'm going to say this and I'm going to create these reports and people will follow me. And that's exactly what happened. It ended up following quite a lot, in as much as all of the American health departments and everyone else got behind him. And next thing, it was basically, this was how we were all told to eat, which was saturated fats are bad. Kind of at that stage, all fats were bad, but saturated fats were definitely bad. Sugars were good, carbohydrates were good, cholesterol was bad. Later on, because everyone started getting colon cancer and other cancers of the digestive system, people decided that fiber was good as well. So fiber became good. And so there's a whole bunch of these things that we all grew up knowing, and I put that in italics, knowing what was good and what was bad for us. But it turns out that a majority of that stuff, if not all of it, was a complete load of cow poo. So therein lies the problem, because we have all spent our entire generation being told that saturated fats were bad and that cholesterol was bad. And it turns out that's not true. And if you look at the statistics of health through the United States and the UK, over the last 50, 60 years, you'll see that, in fact, the health of people hasn't increased. The lifespan has increased, but that's not because of the health. In fact, for example, there are just as many heart attacks. In fact, I think there's a lot more heart attacks. But of course, people are being saved after having a heart attack these days, so fewer people die. So it's not that we don't have as many heart attacks, it's just that more people live because of the emergency services that we have these days. So anyway, getting back to cholesterol and how this affects you. You go into the doctor says you've got high cholesterol, we're going to put you on some statins, and statins are going to control your cholesterol. And they do. They do control your cholesterol. They prevent cholesterol being manufactured, from what I can gather. I think how it works is they regulate how much cholesterol can be recycled by the liver. And so your cholesterol drops. But is that such a good thing? What does cholesterol do? Cholesterol is, from what I can gather, is a sort of like a postal service. It's a freight delivery system. So it's a bunch of trucks and little cars that pick up gear and they deliver it, transport that gear to your organs, to your brain, to all the places that really, really need that the gear. And the gear can be hormones, it can be testosterone, it can be estrogen, it can be all sorts of vitamins and minerals. And cholesterol is really important with vitamin D, as it turns out. In fact, cholesterol and vitamin D go hand in hand. So if you have low cholesterol problems, then you're probably going to have all sorts of vitamin D problems. And of course, that means if you're on a statin and your statins are removing your cholesterol, then you're going to have vitamin D problems. So getting rid of the cholesterol isn't a great thing. So why then have the doctors said we need to get our cholesterol down? Having high cholesterol does indicate that there are all sorts of metabolic problems in your body. The trouble is, getting rid of the cholesterol is only getting rid of the postal service. It's not getting rid of the problem, because the problem is probably more likely to be much greater than cholesterol itself. Cholesterol is a postal service. So you're saying, okay, our manufacturing plants aren't doing their job, so I know we'll cut down the postal service to the manufacturing plants, and that'll fix the problem. The manufacturing plants, of course, are the organs in your body. So if the manufacturing plants in your body have got a problem, then we need to address that problem. Getting rid of the postal service and the delivery system to those organs isn't the way to do it. Also, incidentally, apparently about 20% of your brain is cholesterol, and so when you reduce your cholesterol through statins, you're going to be struggling with all sorts of brain-related issues, including fatigue, and you're going to keep forgetting stuff because your brain needs cholesterol and you're limiting how much cholesterol to have. So that's all fine and dandy. You say, well, my doctor says I've got high cholesterol. Now you're saying that cholesterol is good. What's the problem here? And the problem is that if your organs aren't working properly, then you do end up with high cholesterol, because the cholesterol is, again, with the transportation service that it is, can't deliver the gear that it's got with it. And so it ends up just floating around, making a mess, and then it can be oxidized, and then all sorts of things go wrong. So we need to address what's wrong with your organs. And one of the biggest organs that is having problems is going to be your liver, because your liver is at the heart of all of this. Your liver creates the cholesterol and recycles the cholesterol, and if your liver is unhealthy, then that process can't happen. And so then we end up with all sorts of oxidized cholesterols floating around in your bloodstream, and those little bastards are the ones that start to cause you problems, mainly with, from what I can gather, with building up in your arteries and all that sort of stuff. So what could go wrong with your liver and why? So the main thing that the liver apparently is going wrong with is that it's getting a whole bunch of fat attached to it, and it's called, incidentally, fatty liver. Now, fatty liver used to be something that only alcoholics had, but these days there are just as many people with fatty liver from diet as there are from alcohol. But the results are the same. When the liver gets fat all through it, it can't work properly. And when it can't work properly, basically the wheels start falling off the whole metabolism of your body. So why is the liver going wrong? Why are we getting fatty liver? If it's not from alcohol, and by this we're talking about chronic. We're talking about something that's happened over the last 10 or 20 years, not just something that happened yesterday or last weekend because you went on a bender. So the big issue here isn't alcohol in this situation, but it's something that's related to alcohol, and that's sugar. Good old common sugar. If you've listened to my podcast before, just about every podcast mentions sugar, and it's always in a bit of a bad light. It's lovely, it's delicious. It can be quite handy. You know, if you have sugar, for example, before a workout, I don't personally, but if you have sugar before a workout, then you can have a much better workout because your muscles can use that sugar as its form of fast-acting energy. So if you have a little bit of sugar, it can be metabolized into your muscle cells and used for energy, and it's great. If you have too much sugar, then their muscle cells get filled up. They don't need it anymore. So that sugar gets sort of starts swimming around in your bloodstream. And eventually it's going to be picked up by insulin, assuming you've got insulin. It's going to be taken to the liver, and the liver will convert it to a product called triglyceride, which is a type of fat. Incidentally, in this instance, fat that you're eating doesn't make you fat. Sugar is what is making you fat. You've got too much sugar in your bloodstream. The insulin picks it up, takes it to your liver. The liver converts that sugar to triglycerides, fat, and those triglycerides then will go off and cause, dropped normally apparently, as visceral fat, which is the fat that's in between all of your organs, and it's quite a hard, solid fat in comparison to fat that's just under your skin. I know when I was a kid, and Dad would go and get a whole bunch of chickens, and he'd kill them, and we would have to then pluck them. He did the easy job, which was killing them. Then we had to pluck them, which was a bastard of a job. And then somebody, mainly me, because I was the youngest, had to stick my hand up the chook's jacksie and pull all the guts out, all the intestines and everything else. And one thing we noticed with some of the chooks is that they had, a chook is a phrase for chicken, some of the things we noticed about the chooks was that some of them had all of this really white, hard fat in amongst the organs. So that's visceral fat, and it's a lot harder than fat that's just in between your skin and your muscles. And that visceral fat, incidentally, is the fat that can cause all sorts of problems, including, that's the stuff that's going to really affect your heart health and everything else. So that's all manufactured from sugar. Now, what happens then is that as the liver keeps working hard with all of this sugar that's in it, it ends up having to overwork, and then it starts getting fat building up on the liver itself, and that fatty liver prevents the liver from doing its job properly. Then next thing, you've got all of this blood sugar that can't be converted to triglycerides because your liver isn't doing its job properly, and also the cholesterol that has come back from being a delivery service and is empty can't get back into the liver to do its job properly. So everything starts falling apart. Therefore, a way to measure how good your diet is and how likely you are to have this sort of problem is a relationship between your cholesterol and triglycerides. And really what you want is your triglycerides to be as low as possible. Incidentally, if you're not eating sugar or sugary products, including carbohydrates, I'll mention them in a minute, or of course you're not consuming vast amounts of alcohol, then your triglycerides should be quite low, because effectively there's no sugar to be converted to triglycerides. Therefore your it's easy for me to say, therefore your triglyceride levels should be quite low. What else can be as well as sugar? Sugar, but it can be in your Pepsi or your Coke, any of those full sugar drinks, Mountain Dew, all of those, soda pops I think they're called in America. I always knew them as fizzy drinks, but that's probably not their proper name. You got your energy drinks, of course, your Red Bull and your Lucozade and all of those, all your Monsters, all of those things, they're full of sugar and caffeine, but it's the sugar that does just as much work as the caffeine to make you feel good for a workout or just feel good because you feel tired. Then you've got all of your carbohydrate foods, which are like potatoes and rice and pasta. All of these things can be very quickly converted back down into their standard form, and once they hit the stomach and your saliva and everything else, and that standard form is sugar. And so it's the sugar that causes the problem. In fact, it's the fructose inside the sugar, because the sugar gets broken down further into a product called fructose, which is a type of sugar. So if you don't have the carbohydrates, like the energy drinks or the soda drinks or lots of crisps, of course, or chips or all that sort of stuff, potatoes, rice, lots of rice and lots of pasta. If you don't have all of that sort of, and bread is a major one. It doesn't matter if it's white bread or brown bread, it's also going to get converted into sugar really quickly in your bloodstream. So if you don't have those foods inside you because you haven't eaten them, then you won't have your triglyceride manufactured by your liver, and you won't get visceral fat, and your whole body will become healthier. Fairly quickly, by the way. It could only take sometimes, for some people, we're talking about a month of good eating, and they can seriously see some of their different levels drop, like, for example, your cholesterol levels and so on, and certainly your triglyceride levels. And that's when, with a bit of exercise, you'll be able to get rid of your visceral fat. You know somebody with visceral fat because their belly pokes out abnormally largely compared with the rest of them. You might be a large person in as much as you've got a lot of body fat, but not necessarily a lot of visceral fat in your belly, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's when your belly pokes out way more than your chest, then at that stage there's probably quite a bit of visceral fat, and we need to get rid of that visceral fat. The sooner the better, because that is a walking time bomb. So the moral of the story is, when it comes to cholesterol, Don't worry about the foods you're eating. Don't worry about the eggs and the red meat and the steak and all of that sort of stuff, because the cholesterol you eat has nothing to do with the cholesterol in your bloodstream. Secondly, don't be nasty to cholesterol, because cholesterol does a really important job in your body and is responsible really for entirely sending all of these hormones and all of these vitamins around, and proteins and lipids and all sorts of things around your body to your organs. So the last thing you want to do is stop that from happening. Thirdly, if you do have so-called high cholesterol and so on, and if you're on statins to try to reduce that, then the statins won't help as far as your lifespan is concerned. From what I can gather, it's very unlikely that they'll have any effect on how many people die from heart disease, which is what you're told is the reason you're having them. All they're going to do is reduce your cholesterol and make you feel like shit. They're going to make you feel fatigued. They're going to make you forgetful. They have so many side effects. So what we need to do instead is change your bloody diet, because it's your diet that's causing the triglycerides in your bloodstream, and that's what's causing the problems with your cholesterol levels and your liver. Change your diet. It's really easy. I think the second podcast I did, which is a lot better than this one because I knew what I was talking about, tells you all about how to do it, what foods to throw out, what foods to eat. And what you can expect to do, because it's not quite as easy as all of that. You can just knock out all of your carbohydrates out of your diet and change them for fats. Your carbohydrates are where you're getting your energy from, so they're what currently make you feel energetic. The trouble is they do burn quite quickly in your body, and they have all of these side effects that cause all this grief if you're having too many of them. So if you're going to cut carbohydrates out of your diet, then you need to put an energy source back into your diet, and that energy source generally is fat. And so then we get back to that whole, fat's bad, it's saturated fat, it's bad, it's going to kill me. No, that's another pile of bullshit that we were all fed ages ago. Fat isn't bad, and fat is what your body can use as energy, and it's what your body was designed to use for energy for the last few 100,000 years. The human body was designed to use fat as energy. And so eat fat and you will have energy. And you won't get fat because you're eating fat. You'll get fat because you're eating sugar and carbohydrates. Oh, the irony. So I hope I haven't sent you to sleep. I hope this has been relatively beneficial. The moral of the story is, don't be bad to cholesterol. Be nice to it. It's your friend and it's keeping you healthy. And if you're on statins and so on to try to reduce it, then that's why you're feeling like shit. So we need to increase your cholesterol back to where it needs to be, and we can only do that by getting you off statins. So in the meantime, get your triglycerides the hell out of the way so that your body can start repairing itself. And then hopefully your doctor will go, oh, your triglycerides are low, and you can say, hey, can I have some time off from the statins? And we'll see how we get on. Okay, be safe. Look after yourself. If you want to subscribe, please do so. In the next couple of weeks, I plan to have a bunch of different speakers with me, guests, and that will be a whole lot better than just listening to me talking. And it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.